All right, I've got one for you. What does this and this have to do with Jeep restoration videos? Okay, I'm excited to tell you. Listen now, listen. This is a piece of wood flooring, so it is a floor cover, and this is, well, you know, this is a boot. So this video is going to be about installing the floor covers and the boots on the transmission and the transfer case levers in there in the G503 Jeep. I know. Schiller, you keep it up with this corny intro business and you probably will get the boot. Anyways, let's dive right in and do our installation. The first thing I did was to take a 1/4 by 20-inch tap and tap all the bolt locations on the floor there of the tub. I've got a lot of paint and primer on those, and it's going to make it really easy for the bolts to go back in if I just simply run a tap through them and clean them up before I try to install anything. I've got a floor seal gasket kit that's made out of cork. You can also get them, they're made out of rubber, so I'm showing you here the gasket cork there that goes underneath the floor cover itself. Here's the transmission floor cover plate. It's part number A2982, and I'll flip it over here so you can see some of the detail there. There's a little lip that we'll use, and that's going to go to the side where the transfer case levers are. And we'll simply slip this over the top of our shift lever here through the large hole, and then as you push it down, you're going to want to kind of turn that a little bit so you can kind of manipulate it around those two shift levers there. And here's where the fun's going to begin, is trying to line all those different holes up with that gasket as well. And it's not really difficult. You just need to get yourself a punch and you can kind of work your way around that. I've noticed when I was installing this that even though the floor cover is straight and nice and almost like brand new, it is new old stock, that when you're matching it to a floor there, you kind of got to do some manipulating before you install your bolts. Now here's the bolts. They're 1/4 20 by 1/2 inch with a lock washer. These are not the correct original bolts. I actually bought these from a hardware store and ground the markings off of them. So let's get everything nice and lined up as best we can by eye here. Again, I'm going to show you how to use a punch to line this all up and make it really easy. I'm going to start with one bolt right here in the center and just get everything kind of attached to that floor before I start working my way around. That seems to be a good pivot point to line all the holes up that are in the floor on the tub. Now those top two bolts there on the right, where you're looking at the top there, went right in. They were perfectly lined up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm kind of work my way around with this punch. And I'm just going to make sure that the gasket and the rest of the holes are lined up with the other cage nuts that are installed on the tub. It helps if you kind of press down and hold that plate in with your hand while you're putting these bolts in. Sometimes they want to fight you a little bit, even though we went ahead and tapped those before we got started. But you just got to kind of be patient. And once you get everything started, I'm not tightening everything down yet. It's just finger tight. And again, I'm just using my punch to go around and keep everything lined up while I install each bolt. And just kind of give it a little tweak on each side. It's going to want to move on you. Those bolts do move a little bit in those mounting holes, so you got to kind of keep playing with it as you install the bolts. Okay, I'm going to show you the locations here that you want to leave open because that's going to be involving putting a place on. So we've got the 3 across the front there in. We've got the 2 here where the first radius meets, and then the 2 up top. Those are all installed. The other locations are going to be used to hold down plates, and that top there is for a footrest. The next part we'll be needing is part number A2919, and that is the floor metal ring seal there. That's for the transfer case side. Notice how I've got that square end forward. You're going to want to remember that because it only installs one way. That seal ring itself actually is going to be sandwiched over the top of the leather boot that we're about to install and then fastened through the cover plate there and into the tub. I've got my leather shift boot here for the transfer case. It's very well made and very well stitched together. I'd call the color almost kind of like a rustic brown, and that'll wear in time and it's going to look really, really nice. Now the difficult thing to do is when you've got these inside inserts here, these little clips that are on your shift levers, a lot of folks say that those should be placed on the outside if you are using a rubber boot. Now I've looked through a lot of manuals and I've seen both ways on those clips. That's something to talk about another day. So mine are on the inside, and that's going to be just fine for the leather shift boot that I'm going to be installing. Now I've got the D18 floor cover kit here. These screws are number 10 by 5/8 slotted head screws, and then I've also got that bolt there. It's a 1/4 20 by 3/4 inch bolt, and then there's a lock washer that goes with that. That's the only one that's different because it's got to go through 3 different layers of plates to hold in that ring when we install it. And while I'm on the subject, I might as well show you the hardware that goes for the T84 transmission here. That also has two of the longer bolts. They're 1/4 by 3/4, and it also has a couple of the number 10 by 5/8 inch screw slotted head. That's going to go for the other ring. They are different because they've got to go through multiple metal layers to attach to the tub. One of the personal preferences I have is I like to do the hard stuff first, and then it gets easier. If you do the easy stuff first, well, then it gets a little difficult and you kind of get frustrated. If you look there where I just pointed, that's the shift boot. You'll see that little square cut that goes forward on the top side there where our ring is going to go over, and I'll show you that again in a second. You kind of want to just slip this down over the top of those two shift rods, and you don't want to pull it too tight and you don't want to leave it too loose. It's got to kind of work it till that leather piece or the flange on the bottom there is flat against the surfaces that you're going to be attaching the ring to. It'll make it easier when you install it, and it won't want to bind out or bunge out on you as you install the fasteners. Let's grab our metal ring here, and then again, that square piece goes forward to the top, and then that little bump out there is going to be located at the bottom there on the floor cover so we can put the bolts in. So now, I'm just going to squeeze these just a teeny little bit. That's really all you need. You kind of got to manipulate this over the top, and you may scratch a little paint up. I'm going to paint everything all over again one time when I get this all assembled, so it's really not a big deal to me. So I've got this laid out now. The flat piece again goes towards the front, and that little ring or that little bump out, I'll call it, where the bolt goes through the floor. You kind of want to take your time here, get this all lined up. You can use that same punch to do so. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to install that first forward bolt towards me, and that'll keep everything secure. So I've got my punch there, line my hole up, and that's where that 1/4 by 3/4 inch bolt and lock washer are going to be located. Once you get that one started, the rest of it seems to be really easy to go into place. So we'll get this one all started and get that finger tight just to hold everything in secure while we install the other fasteners. Next, we'll go up to that top, I'll call it at almost the 10 o'clock position there, and we'll line that up with the punch. That punch is going to be invaluable to you in a lot of things. I know I've showed that quite a bit in some of the videos here, but that is an invaluable tool when you're trying to put something like this back together. You can kind of push, pull back and forth and get everything all lined up. Once you get that bolt installed, just finger tight it for the time being, and then we're going to go line up the same locations on those 3 screws that we need to install. Now here I've got a smaller pointed end punch that's kind of nice to get inside the smaller screw hole areas there. All I'm really doing is lining up the holes and making sure that that leather boot is located where it should be so I don't pinch or push the screw through a location it's not supposed to be at. And then I'll go ahead and take one of the screws here and I'll just start it by my finger there. Now they're tapered there, so as you get the threads started inside, it's going to get difficult to turn with your fingers. But we'll get all 3 of them put in, and then we'll go back and tighten them all down. I've got everything snugged up here now, so I'm going to go ahead and take the 2 knobs that I've got for my shift levers here and just go ahead and install them now. They just screw on the top there of the levers. You've got threads on the inside of here. They're plastic. These are also available from Ron Fitzpatrick Jeep Parts. And we'll just spin those on and give them a nice tight with our hands, and that should be good for those 2 levers. And then we'll move on now to the transmission shifting tower. The transmission boot's a little bit easier to do. It'll be mostly because you've only got the 1 lever there, and the locations of those bolts are pretty easy to find too. So if you look at your boot, you're going to see this little notch towards the front. That 1 hole is larger for the bolt, and then you've got the 3 smaller ones there for the screws. So it's kind of self-explanatory how it goes on. I'm going to do this one a little bit different than I did the transfer case shifters. I'm going to take my ring there, and that's the floor seal metal ring part number 2918. That's not to be confused with the 2919. They are similar, but they're shaped differently. And if you notice, I've got that little ear facing downwards towards me on the left hand side there, and the little notch out there goes behind the bolt. And I just kind of work the boot down with that ring, and I'm going to line the holes up on the floor. I'm going to put the bolt into the hole first, and then I'm going to do the screws after the fact. I'm using the 1/4 by 3/4 inch long one here, as I showed you here earlier in the video with the lock washer. And we'll just get that lined up there, and we'll get it started finger tight for the time being. Then I'll go ahead and grab my little pointy punch there that I love so much, and I'll put that into the holes and make sure that those are lined up, and just make sure that that leather shift boot lip there is lined up the way it should be. And then we'll go ahead and we'll install the 3 number 10 by 5/8 screws with the slotted head. Again, just finger tight for the time being. Make sure you keep everything in place, and then after we get all these fasteners installed, we can go back and we can fasten them with a socket and a screwdriver. The last hole location for a bolt or a fastener we need to be concerned with is at the top there at what I'll call the 11 o'clock position. And what we're going to be installing there is the accelerator pedal footrest, and that's part number A1225. And if you notice there I had that nut that was on the back side of it, that's going to allow you to tighten it after you get this in hand tight. I'm just going to crank this down by hand, and I'm noticing that you're probably looking up there in the corner there and you see that little boot there that's on the accelerator pedal. That will be a video for a different day. It's kind of a little bit intricate how you've got to install that boot. But we'll tighten that down by hand, and then we'll go ahead and take a wrench and do our final tightening. The knob on the shift lever there just screws on just like we did the transfer case knobs, and I've got everything all tightened down, and then I primed everything once again, give it a little shot there on the bolts, and then I painted everything again with 33070. It came out really nice, and I'm really enjoying those leather boots. Take a little look from the opposite side here, get a little closer so you can see this little bit of overspray I got there on that leather, and that's just fine with me. I think it came out fantastic, and they're going to wear and last me for a long time. Hope you enjoyed the video. So not that big a deal. As long as you get everything lined up there and the holes lined all up, it should go together there pretty good for you there. If you have to use a tap again to tap in there where you've painted, it's always a good idea when you install the bolts on things you've primed and painted. Just get that old paint off there. It's going to make it a whole lot easier for you. Now, got a question for you guys in the comments. If you've watched this far, it'd be kind of neat to do this. In the comments, who knows what date and what change they went from the leather boots to the rubber boots? Because there was a change. If you know, go ahead and post in the comments. I'm not offering a prize. You just get accolades. I know the answer. And let's see if you out there in the G503 viewing land know as well. Until next time, my friends, keep it safe and happy Jeeping.